When the moon turns red, no woman leaves the king's tower alive. The guard's whisper slipped beneath the iron door like winter air, thin and sharp enough to make Clara Bennett's fingers tighten around the small silver pendant at her throat. She stood alone in the corridor outside the highest chamber of Blackwood Citadel, where the stone walls held the cold even in late spring. Rain tapped softly against the narrow windows. Somewhere far below, a clock chimed midnight, each bell note fading into the hush of a castle that seemed to be holding its breath. Clara had been warned all day. The driver who brought her through the mountain pass had warned her. The maid who handed her a plain gray dress had warned her. Even Lord Victor Ashcroft, with his polished shoes and gentle voice, had warned her with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Do exactly as you are told," he had said. "His Majesty is not himself tonight." Not himself. Clara looked at the heavy door. Four black iron bands crossed it from side to side. A narrow strip of pale light glowed beneath it, then vanished. Behind the door came a low sound. Not a roar, not quite a growl, but something deep enough to stir the air in her chest. The two guards at the end of the hall shifted uneasily. One of them was barely older than Clara, with freckles across his nose and fear written plainly in his eyes. "You can still refuse," he said. Clara almost laughed, but there was no humor left in her. Refuse what? Her pack had signed the papers before she ever saw them. Their winter debts had been stacked on the kitchen table beside an empty flour jar and her father's old medicine bottle. One girl sent to the king's tower. One season of grain forgiven. One village spared from losing its homes. Clara had nodded because everyone had been watching. Because her little brother had been standing in the doorway in socks with holes at the heels. Because her mother had pressed both hands over her mouth and looked away. "If I refuse," Clara said quietly, "they lose the valley." The guard lowered his gaze. For a moment, the rain was the only sound. Clara touched the pendant again. It had belonged to her mother's mother, a small oval of silver marked with a crescent moon. It had never done anything unusual before tonight. But as she stood before the king's door, it felt warm against her skin, almost alive. The lock clicked. Clara froze. No one touched it. The iron bands slid back one by one with a slow scrape that made the guards step away. The door opened just wide enough for darkness to spill into the hall. Then Lord Victor appeared from the shadows behind her, his voice smooth and calm. "Remember," he said, placing a gloved hand lightly between her shoulder blades, "when the moon reaches its highest point, put your hand over the king's heart." Clara turned toward him. "Why?" His smile sharpened by the smallest degree. "Because it may be the only thing that saves him." Before she could ask another question, the door opened wider. Cold air rolled over her, carrying the scent of rain, pine, and something lonely enough to make her heart ache. Clara stepped inside. The door closed behind her. The lock turned. And somewhere in the darkness, the Alpha King breathed her name as if he had been waiting for it all his life. Clara waited until her eyes adjusted, but the darkness inside the tower chamber seemed deeper than ordinary night. The only light came from a fireplace reduced to a bed of dim blue coals, and from the red moon beyond the tall windows. Its color spilled across the stone floor in long, narrow bars, turning the room into something that felt less like a royal chamber and more like a place forgotten by time. She could make out a massive bed near the far wall, its curtains torn away, and shelves crowded with books, old maps, and glass bottles that caught the moonlight like watchful eyes. The room was far too quiet. Clara took one careful step forward. Her boots made almost no sound on the thick rug, but she still felt as if every breath she took might be heard. "Your Majesty?" she asked. Her voice came out softer than she intended. Nothing answered. Then the pendant at her throat warmed again. Clara lifted her hand to it, and a shadow moved near the window. He was there. King Damon Blackwood stood with his back to her, broad shoulders outlined against the red glass. He wore a dark shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, and his black hair fell loose over the back of his neck. He did not look like the monster described in frightened whispers across the kingdom. He looked tired. Not the ordinary tiredness of someone who had missed sleep, but the kind that settled into a person after carrying too much for too long. His hands rested against the stone windowsill. Even from across the room, Clara could see how tightly his fingers were curled. "You should not have come in," he said. His voice was low and rough, but controlled. Clara swallowed. "The door closed behind me." For a moment, He did not move. Then he gave a quiet laugh that held no warmth. That is how it always happens. The words landed heavily between them. Clara remembered the guard in the hallway. She remembered the fear in his face. She remembered Lord Victor telling her to place her hand over the king's heart. Her stomach tightened. Damon turned slowly. His eyes were silver, bright in the red moonlight, and fixed on her with an intensity that made Clara forget how to breathe. There was no cruelty in them. There was warning. "What is your name?" he asked. "Clara Bennett." His gaze dropped to the pendant at her throat. The moment he saw it, something changed in his expression. Not anger. Recognition. He crossed the room in 2 long steps, then stopped several feet away as though an invisible line held him back. "Where did you get that?" Clara touched the silver crescent. "It belonged to my grandmother." Damon's jaw tightened. "Take it off." The command was quiet, but it carried the weight of a king. Clara should have obeyed. She had spent her whole life obeying people who spoke in that tone. But something in his face made her pause. He looked afraid. Not of her. For her. "Why?" she asked. The red moon brightened behind him. Damon's breath caught, sharp and sudden. His shoulders stiffened. The air in the chamber changed, filling with the scent of pine after a storm and the metallic edge of lightning. Clara took a step back, but Damon moved away from her first. He pressed one hand against his chest as if trying to hold something inside. "Because that pendant does not belong to your family," he said. "It belongs to the curse." Clara stared at him. Before she could answer, a deep tremor rolled through the tower floor. The books on the shelf shivered. The blue coals in the fireplace flared bright red. Outside, thunder moved across the mountains, though the sky held no storm. Damon looked toward the locked door, and for the first time, Clara saw something colder than fear in his eyes. "Lord Victor sent you here for a reason," he said. Then the pendant burned against Clara's palm, and a thin line of moonlight spread across the floor between them like a path leading straight to the king's heart. Clara could not look away from the line of moonlight. It moved slowly across the floor, thin as a ribbon, until it reached the toe of Damon's boot. Then it stopped. The chamber seemed to listen. Clara's pendant pulsed once against her palm, a quiet beat that matched the heavy rhythm coming from the king's chest. "What does it want?" she whispered. Damon did not answer at first. He stood perfectly still, his silver eyes fixed on the glowing path between them. The red light sharpened the tired lines around his face, and Clara saw that he was fighting for control with every breath. "It wants what it was made to take," he finally said. "My life." Clara felt the words settle coldly beneath her ribs. "Lord Victor said the pendant could save you. Victor has said many things to keep this kingdom afraid." Damon's voice hardened, but not at her. He moved toward the fireplace, keeping his distance as though he feared even the air around him. 12 years ago, when I took the crown, there was an attempt to bind my wolf to the blood moon. The spell was supposed to make me unstable, weak, easy to control. Clara watched the blue coals flicker red again. Did it work? Damon gave her a look that made her regret the question. Then his expression softened, just slightly. "Every month, the curse wakes. Every month, it tries to turn fear into a weapon." He looked down at his hands. His fingers were trembling now. "And every month, someone tells me there is a new cure." Clara remembered the locked door, the frightened guards, the way Lord Victor had placed his hand between her shoulder blades, guiding her into this room as if he were offering her a gift. A sick feeling rose in her throat. "The women who came before me," she said carefully. Damon closed his eyes. "They were sent away before dawn." Clara stared at him. "Sent away? To safe houses beyond the capital, with money, guards, and new names if they wanted them." His voice lowered. "I did not want them near this tower. I did not want anyone near me. But people said no one survived. People repeat whatever story keeps them from asking questions." A gust of wind struck the windows. The flames in the fireplace bent sideways, and the room filled with a low hum that seemed to come from inside the walls. Clara pressed her hand over the pendant. It was burning now, not enough to hurt her, but enough to make her pulse race. Damon saw it and stepped forward without thinking. The moment he did, the hum grew louder. A pale symbol appeared on the stone floor beneath Clara's feet, a crescent moon wrapped around a circle of dark silver light. She gasped and stumbled back. Damon reached for her, then stopped with his hand suspended in the air. "Do not step outside the circle," he said. "I do not understand." "Neither do I." That frightened her more than anything. A king was supposed to have answers. But Damon looked at the symbol as though he had seen a ghost. That mark was carved into the floor before I was born, he said. It has never appeared for anyone else. Clara's breath came faster. Then why is it appearing for me? Damon looked at the pendant, then at her face. His voice became almost a whisper. Because your grandmother did not give you a family heirloom, Clara. The red moonlight flashed across the room. The tower shook once, hard enough to rattle the glass bottles on the shelves. Damon's eyes brightened with sudden alarm. She gave you the key. The word key hung between them, small and terrible. Clara looked down at the crescent of silver in her hand. It had always been ordinary. Her grandmother had worn it while kneading bread, while tending the tiny garden behind their cottage, while telling Clara that the moon watched over people who had nowhere else to turn. She had never called it a key. She had never said a word about kings, curses, or a tower high above the Blackwood Valley. A key to what? Clara asked. Damon's gaze shifted toward the far wall. At first she saw only old stone, darkened by years of smoke and winter damp. Then the moonlight reached it. A shape appeared beneath the surface, faint as a memory, a door without a handle, outlined in silver lines that curled into the same crescent symbol resting in Clara's palm. The curse was not made in one night, Damon said. It was built slowly, hidden inside laws, rituals, and promises people thought were meant to protect the crown. Clara watched him carefully. And Lord Victor knows about it. Damon's expression tightened. Victor knows more than he should. The tower trembled again. Dust drifted from the ceiling in a soft gray veil. Clara's instincts told her to run, but there was nowhere to go. The door behind her remained locked. The guards were silent beyond it. She thought of her mother's face when the royal carriage arrived that morning. Her mother had tried to be brave, but her hands had shaken as she tied Clara's coat. "Come home to us," she had whispered. Clara had promised she would. Now she wondered whether Lord Victor had ever intended to let her leave. "Why would he send me?" Clara asked. Damon did not look at her when he answered. "Because the curse needs a living bond to open the final seal." His voice was steady, but his hands were not. Someone with moon healer blood. Someone carrying the original key. Clara's throat went dry. My grandmother was a healer? More than that. Damon turned toward her, and the red moon caught in his silver eyes. She was the last woman who tried to stop this curse before it reached me. Clara's thoughts stumbled over each other. Her grandmother had died when Clara was 10. She had been gentle and quiet, with flour on her sleeves and a habit of humming while she worked. Clara had never imagined her standing in a castle, facing men like Lord Victor, guarding secrets that could change a kingdom. She knew this would happen, Clara said. She knew they would come for me. I do not know. Damon's voice softened. But she made sure you had a chance. The pendant grew hotter. Clara nearly dropped it. The silver door on the wall brightened, and a narrow crack opened down its center. Cold air slipped through, carrying the scent of snow and old cedar. From somewhere beyond that hidden door came a sound like a distant heartbeat. Damon stepped back at once. Do not go near it. Clara looked at him. You said it is a key. A key can open a prison as easily as it opens a way out. The words were barely spoken before a voice echoed from the other side of the chamber door. Lord Victor's voice. Calm. Patient. Clara, he called. The moon is at its highest point. Put your hand over the king's heart. Clara felt the circle beneath her feet pulse with pale light. Damon's breathing changed. His shoulders drew tight, and something wild flickered behind his eyes. Yet he did not move toward her. He moved away. He put every inch of space he could between them, as if protecting her mattered more than whatever the curse was about to do. Clara looked at the hidden silver door, then at the king who had warned her instead of commanding her. Outside, Lord Victor knocked once. Inside, the pendant blazed against her skin, and Clara understood that the choice had been hers from the beginning. Clara drew one slow breath and stepped out of the glowing circle. The pale light vanished beneath her boot, as if the floor had swallowed it. Across the room, Damon's head lifted sharply. Clara, do not. His voice was no longer calm. It carried the strain of someone holding a door shut against a storm. But she had spent too many years being told what she was worth by people who had never bothered to see her. Too quiet, too gentle, too small to matter. Lord Victor had expected her to obey because he had mistaken fear for weakness. Clara looked toward the chamber door. You brought me here to use me, she called. You told me I could save him. For several seconds, only the rain answered. Then Victor spoke again, softer now. You can save everyone, Clara. Your family. Your village. The whole valley. Do what you were chosen to do. Chosen. The word made her stomach turn. Damon took another step back until his shoulders met the stone wall. His breathing had become uneven. A faint silver light moved beneath the skin at his throat, then disappeared. He is lying, Damon said. I know. Clara surprised herself with how steady her voice sounded. She turned toward the hidden silver door. The narrow crack in its center had widened. Cold air brushed her face, carrying a whisper she could not understand. Her pendant answered with a pulse of warmth. She remembered her grandmother's hands, flour-dusted and soft, closing around Clara's fingers when she was little. Never let anyone decide what your kindness is for, she had said. Clara had thought it was only a lesson about sharing bread with hungry neighbors. Now it felt like a message sent across years. She walked toward Damon instead. His eyes widened. Stay back. You have been trying to keep me safe since I entered this room. You do not know what happens when the curse takes hold. Then tell me. He looked away, and that was answer enough. The red moon brightened beyond the windows. A deep shiver passed through the tower. Damon's hand closed over his chest, and the blue fire in the hearth turned white. Clara stopped a few feet from him. She could see the exhaustion in his face, the loneliness he had worn so long it had become part of him. He had been king of an entire kingdom, yet he had stood alone in this room while strangers told stories about him. I am not going to put my hand over your heart because Lord Victor ordered me to, Clara said. Damon's gaze returned to hers. Then why are you here? Clara looked down at the pendant. Because I want to know why my grandmother trusted you with this secret. She lifted the silver crescent from her neck. The chain slipped free, and the moment it left her skin, the hidden door gave a low, echoing sound. The crack opened wider. A small beam of moonlight reached through the room and touched Damon's hand. He flinched, but he did not move away. Clara held the pendant between them. What is on the other side? Damon's face went still. The place where the curse began. Lord Victor struck the chamber door from outside, once, then again. The sound was louder now. Clara, he called, and the patience had vanished from his voice. Put the pendant back on. Do it now. Clara looked at Damon. He could have commanded her. He could have taken the choice from her. Instead, he stood motionless, giving her the one thing no one else had offered since the carriage arrived at her home. Freedom. Clara closed her fingers around the pendant. Open the door, she said. Damon stared at her. If I do, there may be no way to close it again. Then we will find another way. For the first time that night, something almost like hope moved across his face. He raised his hand toward the silver door. The moonlight gathered around his palm. Behind Clara, the chamber door shook beneath another furious blow. In front of her, the hidden door began to open, and a woman's voice whispered from the darkness beyond. At last, little moon. The voice came from beyond the silver door, soft as a lullaby and old as the mountain beneath the castle. Clara stopped at the threshold. The darkness on the other side was not empty. It held a narrow stone stairway curling downward, lit by small white flames that hovered in the air without candles or lanterns. The cold rising from below touched her cheeks, but it did not feel cruel. It felt watchful. Damon moved beside her, close enough that Clara could sense the warmth of him without touching him. That voice should not be here, he said. His words were quiet, but every muscle in his body had gone still. Clara looked at him. You know who it is. Damon did not answer. From the stairwell, the voice spoke again. Come down, Clara Bennett. You have carried my promise long enough. Clara's fingers tightened around the pendant. The chain lay tangled in her palm, silver against her skin. My grandmother? She asked. Damon's eyes shifted toward the darkness. Her name was Eleanor Bennett. Hearing it spoken by the king made Clara's chest ache. Her grandmother had been gone for 12 years, yet Clara could suddenly remember every small detail. The scent of lavender soap, the faded blue apron, the way Eleanor had tucked blankets around Clara's shoulders during thunderstorms. She was here, Clara said. In this tower. She was. Damon's voice carried something close to regret. She came the night the curse was set in motion. She tried to stop it before it reached me. The chamber door shook behind them. Lord Victor's voice rose through the iron, no longer smooth. Damon, step away from the girl. You do not understand what she is opening. Damon's expression darkened. I understand more than you think. Clara looked down the staircase. She should have been terrified. She was terrified, but fear had changed shape inside her. It was no longer a wall. It was a lantern, showing her where she needed to be careful. She stepped onto the first stair. The white flames brightened. Damon caught her wrist, then released it immediately when she looked at him. His touch had been brief, respectful, almost uncertain. If you go down there, he said, you may see things that were hidden for a reason. Clara met his eyes. So did you. For a second, Damon looked as though he might argue. Then he nodded once. Together, they descended. The stairway was narrow, and the stone walls were covered with silver markings that resembled vines, wolves, and crescent moons. Clara passed her fingers near them without touching. Each symbol gave off a faint warmth, like sunlight trapped beneath ice. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a circular room. Its ceiling disappeared into shadow. In the center stood a shallow pool of black water, perfectly still. Above it floated a single image made of pale light. An older woman stood there in a blue apron, her silver hair pinned back in the familiar knot Clara had known since childhood. Eleanor Bennet looked exactly as Clara remembered, except her eyes shone with moonlight. Clara forgot how to breathe. Grandmother. The image smiled. Hello, little moon. Clara took a step forward, tears burning behind her eyes. You left me this. She held up the pendant. Eleanor's smile faded. I left you a choice. Damon stood silent at Clara's side. The pool rippled once, though nothing touched it. Eleanor looked toward him, and sorrow passed across her face. The curse was never meant to kill Damon Blackwood, she said. It was meant to make the kingdom believe he could not be trusted. Above them, the tower groaned. Lord Victor was still trying to force his way inside. Eleanor's image flickered. Listen carefully, she said. The pendant can break the curse, but only if the one who carries it chooses compassion over fear. Clara looked at Damon. His silver eyes were fixed on her, not demanding, not pleading, waiting. Then the black water in the pool began to glow red, and Eleanor's voice turned urgent. But Victor has already begun the final ritual. The red light spread through the black water in slow circles, turning the underground chamber into a reflection of the moon above. Clara stepped closer to the pool, but Damon placed himself between her and the glowing surface. He did not touch her. He simply stood there, shoulders squared, as if he could shield her from a force that had waited years to find her. What final ritual? Clara asked. Eleanor's image flickered again. The blue of her apron faded at the edges, and her moonlit eyes looked suddenly older than Clara remembered. Victor cannot rule while Damon is feared but alive, she said. He needs the king to become the monster the kingdom already believes him to be. Then he will offer himself as the calm hand that restores order. Damon's face hardened. He has been feeding the curse for years. Yes, Eleanor said. Every frightened rumor. Every false cure. Every person sent to this tower. He built a cage around you, Damon, and called it protection. Clara felt a cold anger rise in her chest. Lord Victor had smiled at her mother. He had promised the village would be safe. He had spoken softly, as if sending Clara away had been an act of mercy. What does he need from me? She asked. The pool brightened, and the silver pendant in her hand became hot enough that she had to shift it between her fingers. Your bloodline carries the moon healer gift, Eleanor said. The pendant was created to answer your heart. If you follow Victor's command and place it against Damon's chest in fear, it will lock the curse into him forever. Clara looked at Damon. His expression did not change, but she saw the truth land in his eyes. That was why Victor had wanted her hand over the king's heart. Not to save him, to seal him away. And if I do not? Clara asked. Then the ritual will fight to make you afraid, Eleanor said. It will show you every story Victor has planted. It will make Damon seem dangerous. It will make running feel like the only sensible choice. A sound echoed down the stairway above them. Not footsteps. A low, steady pounding, as though something heavy had struck the hidden door in the king's chamber. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Damon turned toward the stairs. We need to go. Clara caught his sleeve. Wait. He looked down at her hand, then at her face. You do not have to stay, he said. If you leave now, I will get you out of the citadel. Even now, with the curse closing around him and Victor waiting above, he was offering her a way out. Clara thought of the people in her village. She thought of the guards outside the tower, frightened because they had been taught to fear their own king. She thought of her grandmother saying that kindness belonged to the person who chose it, not to the person who demanded it. "I am not leaving," she said. Damon's silver eyes searched hers. "Clara, I am scared," she admitted. "But I am not scared of you." The words settled between them, quiet and certain. For the first time, Damon's guarded expression broke. Not completely, just enough for Clara to see the man beneath the king, exhausted from being treated like a curse instead of a person. The pool surged with red light. A sharp wind swept through the chamber, lifting Clara's hair and extinguishing half the white flames along the walls. Eleanor's image began to fade. "The ritual has found you," she warned. "Do not let it decide what you see." The black water rose without spilling over the stone rim. Its surface formed a mirror. Clara looked down before she could stop herself. In the reflection, Damon stood beside her with eyes burning bright and wild, his shadow stretching across the floor like a great wolf. The image was terrifying. Clara's breath caught. Damon stepped away from her at once. "Do not look," he said. But Clara did look. Not at the shadow in the water. At Damon's real face. At the way he had moved back instead of closer. At the way his hands were open at his sides, showing her he would not force her to do anything. The red reflection trembled. Then a voice rose from the pool, wearing Lord Victor's gentle tone. "He is only pretending, Clara. Put the pendant over his heart, and you will finally be safe." Clara held the pendant so tightly that its edge pressed into her palm. Lord Victor's voice drifted from the pool with the same calm patience he had used in her family's kitchen, when he promised that one girl could save an entire valley. It was a clever voice. A comforting voice. It knew exactly how to make fear sound like wisdom. "You do not have to believe him," the voice said. "Look at what he is becoming." The red reflection rippled again. In it, Damon's shadow grew taller, broader, until it filled the chamber wall behind him. The silver in his eyes looked sharp enough to cut through darkness. Clara's heartbeat stumbled. For one terrible second, the reflection made every warning she had heard feel true. The locked tower. The frightened guards. The stories of women who disappeared before sunrise. Damon saw the fear cross her face. He did not move toward her. He moved farther away, one slow step at a time, until his back nearly touched the stone stairs. "Clara," he said, and his voice sounded strained. "Listen to me. You do not owe me your trust." The pool flashed red. "He is manipulating you," Victor whispered. "He wants you close because he needs your gift." Clara looked at Damon's hands. They were shaking now, but he kept them open at his sides. He could have ordered her to come to him. He could have used the authority that made an entire kingdom bow. Instead, he stood alone in the cold chamber, giving her room to choose. The difference was so simple that it hurt. Clara remembered the day her father had lost his job at the mill. The landlord had come to their door with a list of rules and a smile that said he expected gratitude. Clara had watched her mother nod, watched her father lower his eyes, watched their home become smaller around them. Lord Victor's voice carried that same smile. Damon's silence did not. "Show me," Clara said. The words came out quiet, but they changed the room. The red water went still. "What?" Victor's voice asked. "Show me what happened to the women you said did not survive." Damon's eyes closed. For a moment, Clara thought he might refuse. Then he looked toward the pool. "It will not show you the truth unless you ask for it." Clara stepped closer to the water. The red light crawled over her boots, cold as winter creek water. "Show me the truth," she said. The pool darkened. One by one, images rose from its surface. A young woman in a green coat walking through the tower door at dawn, escorted by 2 royal guards. Another woman laughing weakly as a maid wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. A third standing at the castle gate with a small bag in her hands, looking back once at the tower before stepping into a carriage marked for the southern coast. They were alive. Frightened, perhaps, but alive. Clara felt her breath leave her slowly. Damon had told the truth. The images shifted. Lord Victor appeared in a dim hallway, speaking to a guard whose face Clara recognized from outside the chamber. The guard nodded, then carried a sealed letter toward the village roads. The image faded before Clara could see the writing. "What was that letter?" Clara asked. The pool gave no answer. But Victor's voice returned, stripped now of its warmth. "You are wasting time." The chamber shook. A crack ran across the ceiling, and white dust scattered over the black water. Above them, the pounding against the hidden door became louder. Damon's breath changed. Clara turned and saw the silver light beneath his skin spreading along his throat and wrists. He looked down at it with quiet dread. The ritual is pulling the curse closer, he said. We need to leave this room. Clara stared at the pendant in her hand. It was no longer burning. It was beating, steady and warm, like a second heart. Then Eleanor's fading voice returned from somewhere deep within the stone. The pendant will answer one question, Clara. Ask it before the moon reaches its peak. Clara looked at Damon, then at the dark pool. She knew what question mattered most. She lifted the crescent toward the red light and whispered, "Who sent the letter to my family?" The pendant flashed bright enough to turn the entire chamber white. And in that sudden light, Clara saw Lord Victor standing in her mother's kitchen, placing a black sealed envelope on the table 3 months before the royal carriage ever came. The vision vanished so quickly that Clara nearly lost her balance. One moment she was standing in the underground chamber, surrounded by cold stone and red moonlight. The next, she was back in her childhood kitchen. Rain tapped against the small window over the sink. Her mother stood by the table with both hands wrapped around a chipped coffee mug, her face pale with worry. Lord Victor sat across from her in a dark traveling coat, his black seal resting beside a thick envelope. Clara watched from the doorway as if she were 12 years old again, too quiet to be noticed. The mill will close before winter, Victor said in the vision. His voice was gentle, almost sympathetic. The valley has been marked for debt collection, but there may be a solution for families willing to cooperate. Clara's mother looked toward the hallway where Clara's little brother had been sleeping. What kind of solution? Victor's eyes moved to the framed photograph above the fireplace. It showed Clara at 16, standing beside Eleanor in the garden, both of them smiling beneath the apple tree. Your eldest daughter has inherited a rare gift, he said, one that may be needed at the royal court. Clara felt the memory twist inside her. Her mother had never told her this. Not once. She had only said the debts had grown too large. She had only cried when the carriage came. The vision shifted again. Victor stood alone in the kitchen after Clara's mother had left the room. He opened the black envelope and pressed a small silver symbol against the paper. The same crescent moon that now burned in Clara's hand. When the time comes, he murmured, she will walk into the tower willingly. The white light collapsed. Clara found herself back beside the black pool, breathing hard. Her knees felt weak, but Damon was there before she fell. He stopped just short of touching her, his hand hovering near her elbow. Clara, he said quietly, are you hurt? She looked at him. The concern in his face was real. It was not polished or practiced. It was the concern of someone who had spent too long watching people suffer because of a curse he never chose. He planned this, she whispered. Before my father lost the mill. Before the debts. He chose my family. Damon's jaw tightened. Victor has people in every village. He has used hunger and fear as tools for years. Clara's anger rose, hot and clear. My mother thought she was saving us. She was trying to protect you. Damon's voice softened. That is what people do when someone powerful gives them only one terrible choice. Above them, the hidden door groaned. A thin line of red light appeared at the top of the stairway. The final ritual was moving closer. The silver glow beneath Damon's skin had spread to his hands now, bright enough to show through his fingers. Clara looked at the pendant. It pulsed against her palm, steady and alive. Eleanor said it would answer one question. Clara said. It did. Damon nodded. And now? Clara looked toward the stairs. Now I know Victor is not trying to save the kingdom. The black water rippled, and Lord Victor's voice rose from it, stripped of every trace of kindness. You think knowing the truth makes you powerful? Clara stepped closer to the pool. Her fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. No, she said. Choosing what I do with the truth does. The red water surged upward, forming the shape of a doorway. Beyond it, Clara saw the king's chamber above, the hidden silver door shaking beneath heavy pressure. Damon moved beside her, his silver eyes fixed on the opening. If we return, Victor will be waiting. Then he can hear me say no. The pendant flared in Clara's hand. The stone stairway behind them began to crumble into drifting silver dust, leaving only the red doorway ahead. Damon looked at her one last time. You can still walk away. Clara met his gaze. So can you. A faint, surprised smile touched his face. Then the tower above them thundered with a sound that shook the pool to its depths, and the red doorway opened wide. The red doorway closed behind them with a sound like a sigh, and Clara stood once more in the king's chamber. The hidden silver door was gone. In its place, the stone wall looked solid and ancient, as if no secret room had ever existed beneath the tower. But the room itself had changed. The fireplace blazed white. The red moon filled the windows. And Lord Victor Ashcroft stood near the center of the floor, surrounded by 3 royal guards in dark uniforms. He looked exactly as he had in Clara's kitchen months ago, composed, elegant, certain that everyone else in the room belonged to his plan. His gaze moved from Clara to Damon, then settled on the pendant in Clara's hand. "There you are," he said. "I was beginning to think the old wards had swallowed you both." Damon stepped forward, placing himself between Clara and Victor. The silver light beneath his skin had brightened, tracing faint lines along his wrists and throat. His face was pale, but his voice carried through the chamber with the force of a command. "Stand down, Victor." The guards did not move. Clara saw their uncertainty. They were afraid of Damon, yes, but they were also afraid of the man who had given them orders for years. Victor smiled as if Damon had said something amusing. "Your Majesty, you are in no condition to command anyone." He turned to Clara. "You have seen what the curse does. You have seen how close he is to losing himself. Put the pendant where it belongs, and this can end." Clara looked at the silver crescent. The metal was warm in her hand. She could feel its pull, gentle but persistent, urging her toward Damon's heart. For a moment, the room blurred at the edges. The curse wanted her to see the king as a threat. It wanted her to remember every fearful story. But then she noticed something small. Damon had not looked at the pendant once. He was watching the guards, watching Victor, watching every movement around Clara, even while the curse tightened around him. "You sent the letter to my family," Clara said. Victor's smile faded by the smallest degree. "Your family received assistance when they needed it. You created the debt." Clara's voice grew steadier. "You chose my village. You chose me." One of the guards glanced at Victor. Another lowered his eyes. Victor folded his hands behind his back. "I gave your family an opportunity. You should be grateful." The words struck Clara harder than any shout could have. She thought of her mother's trembling hands, her brother's worn socks, her father pretending he was not sick because medicine cost too much. Victor had turned their need into a trap and expected gratitude for it. Clara lifted her chin. "You did not give us a choice." The white fire surged. The chamber windows rattled. Damon's breath caught, and the silver light under his skin flashed bright enough to fill the room. The guard stepped back. Victor's expression sharpened. "Clara, now," he said. "Put your hand over his heart." Damon turned his head slightly toward her. His eyes were bright with pain, but his voice remained low. "Do not listen to him." "I am not," Clara said. She walked toward Damon. Victor took one quick step forward, but the guards blocked him without being told. Clara stopped in front of the king. Up close, she could hear the uneven rhythm of his breathing. She could see the effort it took for him to stand still. "I need you to trust me," she whispered. Damon's gaze held hers. "I do." Clara placed the pendant against her own heart instead. The silver crescent flashed with moonlight, and a clear voice filled the chamber. Eleanor Bennett's voice. "The curse was born from fear. It can only be undone by a freely given truth." Victor's face went still. Clara looked at Damon. "Then tell the truth," she said. "Not to me. To everyone." Damon looked past Clara toward the guards, toward Lord Victor, toward the red moon burning beyond the windows. For years, he had allowed silence to become a shield. He had believed that if he stayed inside the tower, if he kept his distance from the people who feared him, then no one else would be pulled into the curse. But silence had left room for Victor's lies to grow. Clara stood before him with the pendant pressed to her own heart, asking for truth instead of obedience. It was the bravest thing anyone had asked of him. Damon drew in a slow breath. The silver light beneath his skin flickered, then steadied. "The curse began 12 years ago," he said. His voice was rough at first, but it grew stronger with every word. "On the night I took the crown, Lord Victor brought a ritual before the council. He said it would bind the royal wolf to the kingdom and protect our people from war." Victor's face tightened. "Your Majesty is confused. The moon has affected his judgment." Damon did not look at him. The ritual did not protect anyone. It fed on fear. It made the court believe that I would lose control whenever the blood moon rose. And every time people believed it, the curse became stronger. The guards shifted uneasily. Clara watched their faces. One was older, with gray at his temples. He looked at Damon as though he were seeing him clearly for the first time. I ordered every woman sent from this tower to be protected, Damon continued. They were given safe passage, money, and the right to leave the capital. But Victor made certain the truth never returned with them. Victor's calm finally broke. Because you were dangerous, he said. You are dangerous. Look at yourself. The white fire bent toward Damon as if the room itself had heard the accusation. Silver light rose along Damon's arms. Clara felt the pendant tremble against her chest, but she did not step away. Damon looked down at his hands. Then he lifted his gaze to the guards. I was afraid, he said. The words were simple. They carried more weight than any royal command. I was afraid of what the curse might make me. I was afraid of hurting people. So I let fear decide my life for me. The room became very quiet. Even the rain against the windows seemed to fade. Clara could feel Damon's heart beating fast beneath the silence. But he did not turn away. That was my failure, he said. Not the curse. Not the moon. Mine. Lord Victor took a step toward the door. The older guard moved into his path. My lord, the guard said, voice unsteady. The king is speaking. Victor stared at him. You would question me now? I would listen, the guard replied. Clara felt something shift in the room. Not magic. Not yet. Something more fragile and more powerful. People choosing to see what had been hidden from them. Damon looked at Clara, and his expression softened. Eleanor Bennet came to me 12 years ago, he said. She discovered what Victor had done. She told me that one day, someone carrying her courage would return with the key. Clara's eyes stung. Her grandmother had known. She had trusted that Clara would someday find her way here, even if Clara had never understood why. Victor's voice cut through the silence. You think a frightened village girl can undo what has been written into the moon? Clara turned toward him. Her fear was still there, but it no longer felt like a chain. It felt like proof that she had something worth protecting. No, she said, but a girl who is done being used can. The pendant blazed against her heart. The red light in the windows flickered, and for the first time that night, Lord Victor stepped back. The pendant's light spread through Clara's chest like the first warmth of sunrise after a long winter. It did not burn. It did not demand. It simply answered the truth she had chosen. The red glow at the windows began to thin, and the white fire in the hearth settled into a steady gold. Lord Victor looked from Clara to Damon, and for the first time, he seemed smaller than the room around him. Not powerless. Not yet. But exposed. You have no proof, he said. His voice was low, carefully controlled, though Clara could hear the strain beneath it. A frightened girl, a cursed king, and a story from a dead woman. Is that what you expect the court to believe? Clara looked at the guards. Their faces had changed. They were no longer watching Damon as if he were a danger waiting to happen. They were watching Victor. The older guard stepped forward and removed the black seal from his belt. I delivered letters for Lord Victor, he said, to villages across the northern valley. I was told they were relief notices. Victor turned sharply. Captain Hale, you are speaking beyond your station. Maybe I have been silent beyond it for too long, the captain replied. His hands trembled, but he did not lower his eyes. Clara saw the same thing in him that she felt in herself. Fear, still present, but no longer in charge. Damon stood beside her, the silver lines beneath his skin fading one by one. He looked exhausted, yet he remained upright. Bring the council records, he said. Every order signed in my name concerning the tower. Every payment sent to the women who left this place. Every debt notice issued to the Bennett Valley. The guards moved at once. Not because the curse had vanished completely. Not because fear had disappeared. They moved because they had heard the king speak plainly, and because truth had finally made room for choice. Victor took another step back. You cannot undo what has already begun, he said. His eyes fixed on the pendant at Clara's heart. The blood moon is still above us. The final seal is open. You will have to choose, Clara. You can protect him, or you can protect everyone else. The room darkened at the edges. The red moon flared once more, and a deep vibration passed through the floor. Clara felt it in her teeth, in her bones, in the pendant against her chest. The curse was not gone. It was waiting. Damon looked at her, his face pale beneath the moonlight. He is right about one thing, he said. The final seal is open. Clara's breath caught. What happens now? Damon's eyes moved to the fireplace, where the gold flames had begun to curl around a shape in the air. A crescent moon, then a wolf, then a doorway of light. The curse will try to find a new place to live, he said. It was built from fear. If we fight it with fear, it will remain. Clara looked at Victor. And if we do not? Damon's voice softened. Then we must face it without letting it decide who we are. Lord Victor gave a quiet, bitter laugh. You cannot defeat fear with kindness. Clara thought of her mother, her grandmother, the guards who had chosen to listen. She thought of Damon stepping away whenever she was afraid, even when every instinct in him had been pulled toward her. She lifted the pendant from her chest and held it between both hands. No, she said, but kindness can stop fear from owning us. The pendant opened like a small silver flower. A beam of moonlight rose from its center and touched the floor between Clara and Damon. The glowing doorway in the fireplace widened. From beyond it came the sound of wind sweeping over distant hills, followed by the faint echo of hundreds of voices whispering the same old warning. Damon reached for Clara's hand, then paused, waiting. Clara placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and steady. Together, they stepped toward the doorway as the red moonlight gathered behind them, and Lord Victor whispered one final promise into the dark. You will not come back the same. The doorway carried them into silence. Clara expected darkness, but instead she found herself standing on a wide hillside beneath a sky washed clean of red. The moon hung above the valley, pale and full, while thousands of small lights shimmered below like stars scattered across the earth. At first she thought they were lanterns. Then she heard the voices. They were not coming from one place. They came from everywhere, from the distant villages, from the castle walls, from the old stories passed between parents and children. Every whisper carried the same fear. Damon stood beside her, his hand still around hers, though his grip had loosened. He was listening too. They are afraid of me, he said. There was no anger in his voice, only a tired sadness that made Clara's heart ache. In the center of the hillside, a great silver wolf appeared, formed from moonlight and mist. It was not Damon, but it carried his eyes. Around its paws, shadows gathered and twisted into the shape of chains. The old warning rose louder. No woman survives him. No one can trust him. Keep your distance. Clara felt the words press against her, trying to pull her hand away from Damon's. The pendant opened in her palm, its silver petals glowing softly. She remembered Eleanor's voice. Compassion over fear. Not because fear was foolish. Not because danger was not real. But because fear could be used by people like Victor until it became a cage for everyone. Clara looked at Damon. What do you see? She asked. He stared at the wolf of moonlight. Every moment I believed I was safer alone. The shadows tightened around the wolf's legs. Every time I let someone else decide what I was. Clara stepped forward. The whispering grew louder. The hillside trembled beneath her boots. She was afraid. Her knees wanted to give way. But she had walked into the tower, down into the hidden chamber, and through a doorway made of moonlight. She had learned that courage was not a lack of fear. It was choosing what mattered while fear watched. Then tell it something else, she said. Damon's eyes found hers. Clara raised the pendant between them. Tell it who you are. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then Damon turned toward the silver wolf. His voice carried across the valley, deep and clear. I am Damon Blackwood. I am the king who hid because he was afraid. I am the man who lets silence hurt people. But I am not the curse placed on me. The chains around the moonlit wolf cracked into silver dust. The whispering faltered. Clara felt the pendant warm in her hand, and she spoke before doubt could stop her. I am Clara Bennett. I was sent here because someone thought my family's need made me easy to control. But I choose what my kindness means. I choose who I trust. And I will not let fear speak for me. The hillside filled with light. It rose from the pendant, from the moon, from the silver wolf that lifted its head toward the sky. The shadows broke apart like smoke in morning wind. Back in the tower chamber, the red glow vanished from the windows. The white fire became gold. Damon swayed once, and Clara caught his arm. He looked at her with silver eyes that were finally clear. Outside the chamber, the castle bells began to ring, not in warning, but in dawn. Captain Hale entered with council records in his arms, followed by guards who no longer looked away from Lord Victor. Victor stood near the door, silent now, as the truth of his letters and false orders waited to be read. Damon did not look at him first. He looked at Clara. You saved me, he said. Clara shook her head gently. We saved each other. He lifted her hand and pressed it over his heart, not as a command, not as a ritual, but as a promise freely given. The pendant settled against their joined hands, glowing with a quiet crescent light. Beyond the windows, the first gold edge of sunrise touched the mountains. And far beyond the castle walls, from the dark forest where no one had been watching, a single wolf answered the dawn with a long, unfamiliar call.